Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream, and thank you so much for tuning in to another show. The American president is having an attack now against the Israeli president, but before you get all excited, for all of the wrong reasons. It's not for the genocide. It's not for Israel killing innocent civilians in Gaza. It's not for any of the atrocities that Israel is doing. He's actually having this attack against the Israeli president because the Israeli president isn't granting Benjamin Netanyahu the pardon. He's refusing to pardon Benjamin Netanyahu. And he says it's a disgrace, it's shameful. A huge attack against the Israeli president because he's not giving Benjamin Netanyahu a pardon. A pardon for what? A pardon for things that are related to Israel. Corruption charges against Netanyahu. He has 3 to 4 cases in him in the Israeli courts. Things to do with the political corruption, things to do with the financial corruption, trying to control more Israeli media, all sorts of criminalities. First, it's none of the business. It's none of Donald Trump's business whatsoever to say anything in that matter. But Netanyahu, of course, asked Donald Trump to firstly start lobbying. He needs to be pardoned. And then he actually asked him to mention this in the Israeli Knesset and also send a letter to, but the Israeli president isn't granting Netanyahu a pardon. That means Netanyahu will still be facing justice in Israel. Or what is called justice, Israel and justice are oxymorons, but hey, you get the picture. Why does Netanyahu want it so bad? Because he wants to continue his political career, and because, of course, he doesn't want anything to get in his way. He doesn't want to end up in prison in Israel. If not for all of the crimes that he's done against the Palestinian people and the butchering of infants that still goes on to this day, then for the criminal acts inside of Israel, trying to take over the judicial system, control the media, do everything that he wants from a security perspective, financial perspective, and get away with it. Now, this happened 2 days ago, and now we have a response. From Herzog's side, they're saying that if this is so, this is a red line that's being crossed. What if so? What if it was none other than Benjamin Netanyahu asking Donald Trump to make these statements against the Israeli president, because those statements came after Netanyahu met with Donald Trump. You see, when Donald Trump was meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu, and Netanyahu basically rushed and he asked for that meeting, and they spoke over there, most of the talk was about Iran. The talk wasn't about other stuff, according to what we heard. However, now that this is coming out, it's clearly something that Netanyahu mentioned to the American president during his meeting with him. He told him, call or make a statement, post something about the Israeli president and the fact that he's not granting me a pardon, and say how bad that is. Is that on Trump's priority list? It isn't. Netanyahu made it a priority. It's not on Trump's priority list. It's none of America's business even. It's none of the state's business what happens in Israel internally. It shouldn't be the case, at least politically. Criminal charges interfering with the judicial system. But Netanyahu knows the score. They know how intertwined things are, and he knows very well how the judicial system in the United States operates when you have the top leading figures going against the most vulnerable and the victims of the pedophile murdering network of Jeffrey Epstein, Pam Bondi, mocking them, ridiculing them, pretending as if nothing happened and that President Trump is an angel. A man who, according to these files, raped and abused underage girls, and some of them were later murdered. One of whom had her head blown off. That's your democracy and president. Where's the outrage? Oh no, Russia, it's Russia. Yeah, of course. So what's gonna happen in Israel? Well, chances are this is gonna make it more difficult for Benjamin Netanyahu. This whole scene is gonna make it more difficult for Benjamin Netanyahu to get anything. Firstly, they're gonna have to inquire about this. But if you notice, the anger that's coming from the Israeli president's side is more towards the Israeli prime minister rather than Donald Trump himself. Why? Because he knows it wasn't necessarily Donald Trump who actually wanted to do this. It was actually Benjamin Netanyahu pushing Donald Trump to do it. He knows that it's not the priority of Donald Trump. He knows very well. So now, chances are, it's going to be more difficult for Netanyahu to get a pardon or an amnesty or whatever it is in Israel after he's done that with the American president and basically putting the Israeli president to shame in front of the whole world. He doesn't care about his own country. He doesn't care about it. The only thing he cares about is himself. Nothing whatsoever. I don't believe these people tell you they care about their, despite all of the atrocities of Israel and Zionism and all of that, Netanyahu in particular, he doesn't care about anyone. He does not care about anyone but himself. And he's taking Israel downhill, that's it, into oblivion. That's what he's doing. It's not just the genocide of the Palestinian people. It's the total elimination of the state of Israel. That's what he's doing for his own sake. And he'll be protected. If Israel is done, over, that's it, he'll be protected. He'll go to a safe haven in the United States up until the United States gets liberated too. So now it's more difficult for Netanyahu to get a pardon. And as a matter of fact, it could escalate things even further with him. They can add now more charges, continue the court case against him. He has nowhere to hide with Gaza. But what would be his last exit? How is Netanyahu going to go down as a hero? What's going to happen? How is he going to save his image in front of his base? The main thing that's most important for Benjamin Netanyahu. He will go and escalate somewhere. He will probably go and escalate with Iran. That's the biggest likelihood, of course, with the support of the United States administration, because America is occupied. And we'll get to that in a sec. Again, more elaboration on the occupation of the United States of America. And hopefully, he'll hope that he will win the next elections, and then that's it. He will actually take control of the judiciary system, get rid of everything to do with his court case, and grant himself an amnesty. Become a prime minister, turn Israel into a presidency or a full-throttle dictatorship. This was already a scenario that was mentioned by Israelis, by the way, and then grant himself amnesty and, pardon himself. Okay, that's the first thing they wanted to talk to you about. And of course, Iran is a very big thing. But it's not just Iran, it's Russia too. The United States is preparing, alongside NATO, to have a naval blockade of Russia, according to Nikolai Korchunov, Russia's ambassador to Norway. He told that to the RIA Novosti news agency. He said NATO members, including Norway, are effectively turning the Baltic and Arctic regions into a garrison-style environment through operations such as the Baltic Sentry, Eastern Sentry, and Arctic Sentry. He added that these actions restrict the freedom of navigation in violation of international law. In recent years, Russia has reported unprecedented NATO activity and buildup of forces near the western borders. The Kremlin has maintained that while Russia does not threaten any nation, it will not ignore actions that are potentially dangerous to its national interests. What's happening here? What's happening here is a representation of the American hegemonic attempts before the fact that we have a multipolar world is established once and for good. That's it. They began with Venezuela. They're in Iran. They're sending a second aircraft carrier now. It's confirmed. And now the Russians are saying they're actually having or planning a naval blockade against us. But through NATO, primarily. You know, NATO's America's proxy in Europe. They'll go and they will add more forces, escalate even further. Although the United States was the side that took a ship in the area, in the region, that was followed by a Russian attack in its Oreshnik, with its Oreshnik, against what was believed to be at the time the biggest gas storage in Europe that is owned by American companies. All right, well, are they going ahead with that to the end, or what's going to happen exactly? The likelihood of NATO having an aggression against Russia is there. It's a possibility. However, it's not very likely that they will do that without full participation from the United States. The United States will try and use them as a front. But the key thing here is that Europe is divided on the case of Russia and the case of Ukraine. The EU states, they're divided heavily about what's happening in Russia. Even there are critical voices from within Germany, one of the biggest European donors to Zelensky's regime, who recently met with Reza Pahlavi. So we can see the pattern. He's against the Palestinian cause, supports Israel against the innocent people, and supports Reza Pahlavi against the Iranian people, the majority of the Iranian people, vast majority of the Iranian people. But Trump, of course, wants to use NATO as a proxy against Russia to try and extract, to try and choke Russia even further. You know, he's trying to have these. He recently declared that India stopped buying gas and oil from Russia, which was unsubstantiated by the. But he said that, and he's trying to create the scene. You know, I'm coming to Russia, I'm coming to Iran, and I'm coming to China too. Shows you the mentality about the state of affairs, the so-called rules-based order. No rules, no nothing. It's a force-based order. It's a terror-based order, intimidation-based order. And that is it. Coming from the United States of America, that constantly tells us about its liberty, its democracy. Listen, religious liberty. Religious liberty is something very important in the United States, isn't it? And there was a Religious Liberty Commission event. They had a hearing. And guess what they spoke about? They spoke about anti-Semitism and religious liberty in the private sector. You know, government run, okay? Office of Public Affairs. So before we get into what happened, all of the kerfuffle and the drama and the statements, Religious Liberty Commission, so the commission is the Religious Liberty Commission, it hosts a fifth hearing on anti-Semitism and religious liberty in the private sector. If you're about religious liberty, then why don't have an event about religious liberty? Talk about how is religious liberty going on? Okay, if you're a religious liberty commission and you want to talk about discrimination, then why is it anti-Semitism? This made-up term, pseudo-term, to supposedly depict or represent anti-Jewish hate. If you have a problem with the Jewish people, you say there's anti-Jewish hate. If you have a problem against the Muslims, anti-Muslim hate. If you have a problem against the Christians, you'll say anti-Christian hate. These are the terms. Semitism. And we'll understand why, because they want to connect to the idea that the so-called Jews, the Zionists, are connected to the land of Israel, and therefore any criticism of Israel is a criticism against Zionism, which in return is a criticism of the Jews. It's intertwined garbage. Anyway, they didn't start it with religious liberty, they started with anti-Semitism. Now, we all know the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. 7 out of the 14 clauses relate to Israel. It says a lot about Semitism itself and this term and this whole facade and nonsense. Nothing to do with the Jewish people. Nothing to do with being against a religion. Only against the ideology of Zionism, and they are escalating it to make it anti-Semitism. What happened? One lady participated. Her name is Prejean Boller, former Miss California. She participated. And this is what she had to say. Listen to this.
Stop carelessly labeling people anti-Semites. Catholic Christianity does not in any way require you to embrace Zionism as a fulfilled prophecy. So what I've heard today is that if you don't support Zionism, you are an anti-Semite. I'm a Catholic, and Catholics do not embrace Zionism, just so you know. So are all Catholics anti-Semites, according to you?
As I said, anti-Zionism.
So just to be clear, are Catholics anti-Semites?
I'm going to interrupt the discussion. Our committee is focused on religious liberty taken from all people.
Right, but we're talking about a foreign nation, so I want to be clear on what the definition of anti-Semitism is. If I don't support the political state of Israel, am I an anti-Semite? Yes or no?
They already answered. Asked and answered.
According to you on the record, yes? I don't agree with that, because as a Catholic, I don't agree that the new modern state of Israel has any biblical prophecy meaning at all. So that's my stance, and I'm Catholic. Stop.
Very clear. Okay, said very clearly, I'm a Catholic, I don't support Zionism. And as a matter of fact, she invited the rabbi, because it was about anti-Semitism, so she invited the rabbi, a rabbi called Yaakov Shapiro, who is a very well-known voice amongst the American anti-Zionist Jews. He's a rabbi, Jewish leader, and he's against the Zionists, and she reportedly suggested that they bring him and a couple of more, and the committee rejected. So the prerequisite was you need to be a Zionist. You need to be a Zionist to participate. And she said that. She said, according to my belief, this is about religious liberty. According to my belief, I'm a Catholic. I can't be a Zionist. Does that make me an anti-Semite? And the guy says, yes, you're an anti-Semite. One of the Zios over there. What did they do with her? Removed after the dispute. They're pressuring her to resign. And the commission was about religious liberty. Religious liberty in the United States. So long as you don't talk about Zionism. Religious liberty for Zionists, that's what you have in the United States. The only religious liberty there is in America is the Zionist religious liberty. That is the whole thing. And they'll have their trained and prepped spokespeople, and they'll come up in these conferences and defend the Zionist cause, get paid in either shekels or dollars, depends on how they prefer to get paid. And they'll tell you that it's about Israel. And if you criticize Israel, then you're an anti-Semite. And if you are against Zionism, then you are an anti-Semite because you don't believe that the Jews should have a land, and you are a hypocritical individual, and. That is the state of the United States of America. There is no religious liberty. If a woman who criticizes Zionism on a religious liberty board meeting that is made by the government, the Department of Justice belongs to it, or they made that press release and the committee belongs to the government, then what else is there? Anyway, she's refusing to resign. She's refusing to resign, and she published this statement over here. I wore an American flag alongside a Palestinian flag as a moral statement of solidarity with civilians who are being bombed, displaced, and deliberately starved in Gaza. I did this after watching many participants ignore, minimize, or outright deny what is plainly visible. Campaign of mass killing and starvation against a trapped population. Silence in the face of this is not religious liberty, it is moral complicity. My Christian faith calls me to stand for those who are suffering in need. Contrary to your claim, the hearing was not narrowly about America. Nearly every witness framed anti-Semitism through the lens of Israel and Zionism. That's one of the key things here. They weaponize, of course, this made-up term of anti-Semitism and make it only about Israel. Islamophobic remarks were made from the panel and a few of my fellow commissioners. Do you remember when you said the words rapist Islamic regime, implying an entire religion of Islam is associated with terrorism? I asked those present to stop making Islamophobic remarks because they are incompatible with both Christian teaching and the purpose of a religious liberty commission. Makes sense. I mean, don't show prejudice against anyone only based on their religion. Forcing people to affirm Zionism as a condition of participation is not only wrong, it is directly contrary to religious freedom, especially on a body created to protect conscience. As a Catholic, I have both constitutional right and a God-given freedom of religion and conscience not to endorse a political ideology or a government that is carrying out mass civilian killing and starvation. I did not pivot to Israel. I responded to the framework that dominated the hearing. The conflation of criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism and the demand that dissenting Americans be silenced. Disagreeing with the government's policies is not derangement, it is a constitutional right, and for me, a matter of Catholic conscience, a religious liberty commission should protect that right, not punish it. Yet the Religious Liberty Commission is doing the exact opposite. I will not be resigning. So she told them, I'm not going to resign, basically. Anyone demanding that I do so only proves my point that in practice, this body is being treated as if it is open only to pro-Israel Zionists. Surprise, surprise. Another government body only open to pro-Israel Zionists. We all heard the stories about how whenever any congressman makes one statement against Israel, AIPAC heavily funds his opponent in the next round, and they lose because it's about the money at the end of the day, and these people literally buy politicians. She continued, it's openly only to pro-Israel Zionists rather than the diverse range of religious voices it was created to represent. The commission meant to defend religious liberty cannot purge commissioners whose faith leads them to different conclusions. I will not be bullied. I have the religious freedom to refuse support for a government that is bombing civilians and starving families in Gaza, and that does not make me an anti-Semite. It makes me pro-life Catholic with a free American who will not surrender religious liberty to political pressure. Zionist supremacy has no place on an American Religious Liberty Commission. Very, very clear and straightforward. And I mean, it should be understood. It should be understood, and it should be as clear as daylight, these things. However, they want to portray them as if they are not. And later on, she posted this image here, this post with Miko Peled, who's an anti-Zionist Israeli, a Muslim lady. And she said that this is every Zionist supremacist's worst nightmare. Muslims, Christians, and Jews all united under the banner of religious freedom. We condemn the Zionist supremacy and the demanding we deny our individual faith for fear of being called an anti-Semite. Religious freedom lives on. It's very simple. It should be very easy to understand. Yet somehow in the United States of America, land of the free, they don't allow it. No, you need to be pro-Israel. You need to buy the narrative of Randy Fine and Mark Levin and Lindsey Graham. Help is on the way. And if not, then you face all sorts of problems and potential killing. Yeah. Recently, we've been hearing more about death threats for people who criticize Israel in the United States of America. Whether, people talk about podcasts or politicians and what have you. Literal death threats. That's the United States of America. And Donald Trump's planning to deploy ICE or any other government forces in the next elections, primarily in more Democrat states, nationalize the elections. That's it. Turn it into a dictatorship. Then he will prove that the people who said he will actually be the last president of the United States of America, they were right. And these were the main things that I wanted to wrap up with you. I'll open the space up for a couple of questions from the community before we wrap up. John and Gabrielle and Joseph and Brian, thank you very much for your super, much appreciated. Brian, you said, hi Mahmoud, there's speculation that the US could deploy Navy SEALs inside of Iran for regime change if war breaks out. How realistic is that in your take on this? I highly doubt that they will try and send Navy. What are the Navy SEALs going to do with Iran? Navy SEALs are good with innocent people, not with Iran. Iran is a nation that resists, and Iran has solid people. Iran has millions of fighters. Do you know how many reservists Iran has? What Navy SEAL? They'll be lost. They were obliterated in Yemen alongside Israelis, reportedly 73 of them at the time, according to some reports, when they tried to carry out an operation inside of Yemen. No Navy SEAL and no Navy EEL will be taking down Iran. Assuming they would start a war with them, by the way. It's becoming more likely with the second aircraft carrier. And there is a huge risk there. There is a huge risk there. John, Mahmoud, brother, I wrote a book on Palestine, Jews and Zionism. May I email you a copy? Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. My family was expelled from Lidda. You will return, inshallah. You and your descendants, inshallah, will one day return, and all of the Palestinians who were expelled from their homes or their descendants, inshallah, will be returning. And they will be returning to their homes and their villages that they were expelled from in 1948 and 1967, when Zionism is dismantled and the leaders of Zionism flee, and a liberated Palestine is established with freedom across the board, no supremacy, with rights, in a country that treats people equally, gives them equal rights. And thankfully, early Zionists said that the elderly will die and the young ones will forget. Little they knew that the elderly indeed would die, like all of us will, but the younger generation would be fiercer than the elderly in their right to return to Palestine. Wavy McFly, there's a lot of misdirection with misinformation coming from Zionist news like Axios, Wall Street Journal, and others. How do you know what to believe? It's a lot to keep up with, Salam. Well, I wouldn't restrict it. I mean, part of the reason that we, of course, do this is to highlight as much as possible. But I wouldn't only restrict it to these outlets, by the way. These are just some of them. These are just few. We have much, much more than that, by the way, with misinformation and propaganda. This has been going on for a very, very long time, by the way. I would highly recommend you subscribe to the platform that we launched not long ago, which is NewsV Pro, that gets you news from across the board, the most trending news, and it summarizes the articles that you get and read and analyzes them with an uncensored AI. Not the ChatGPT Zionist type, no. We created an AI that is uncensored, tells you everything to do with Palestine, resistance, Israel, apartheid, Trump, all of the terminology that is required on its own. And we have video verification there too. If you watch YouTube videos, for example, you'll go and you have bias indicators, show you how you're being misled. There's a podcast section as well where you can generate your own podcast. I'd highly recommend you subscribe to NewsV Pro in the link below, because we created this platform with the intention of having a platform without the need to individually target every subject, because I cover topics, the most important ones, or at least, the ones that I see most relevant, but I'm limited, I'm one individual. When you talk about huge information, a lot of information being published across the world, it's difficult to keep up with everything. So that's why we created this platform, to automatically gather all of that information and analyze it in an uncensored way so that the end user would be able to get to the bottom line of the truth, basically. So there's a free trial that you can try, and afterwards it would have to be a paid subscription too, because of course there's a lot of funds involved in operating the system as well. But if you are an avid newsreader, someone who is very interested in current affairs, whether it's to do with politics or finance or technology or whatever, I'd highly recommend it. Then with also something very important with the mainstream media is to understand that the scope of misinformation goes way beyond mainstream media. So mainstream media is just one source of misinformation. Movies, people who call themselves alternative media, the way that you get the information on social media. So algorithm manipulation. That's why all of them are connected. You know, they get TikTok. Larry Ellison is there. Palantir is there. They pay to show you ads. They pay to show you ads in the Super Bowl. They'll tell you don't mix sport with politics. Music, it doesn't need or should not include political messages, and anyone who dares to say something is banned or criminalized or canceled and what have you. So the scope of misinformation is much wider than mainstream media. And the journey to find out what's actually true is a hard journey. Now, of course, we tried to make it easier with NewsV Pro, you know, because then you can at least get to the points that you want from a current affairs perspective. And also, it's important to keep in mind that it's not only restricted to the things that the mainstream media brings you. In NewsV Pro, we cover primarily the things that come either on mainstream media or also social media or YouTube, for example, or, you know, people who call themselves, you know, alternative media and what have you, to analyze and, you know, get to the bottom of things. And I hope that clarifies. And John, you will find it in the, thank you for your super, you'll find it in the description box, in the channel description box. Ibn Lahad, what do you think of Iranian nationalists who hate Palestinians? Why should I care about them? Doesn't bother me whatsoever. However, what's important to note about some of the, I wouldn't even call them nationalists, I call them the Iranian agents of the Mossad. It has nothing to do with the Iranian nationality. These people are paid. Israel pays them. Israel moves them. Otherwise, why would they raise flags of Israel in their protests? They're agents. It's a part of a psychological operation. Did we see the people who were in Iran in the past couple of days? Did we see the scale of the protests that took place in Iran? If you haven't, here's some of them. Look at that. These are the protests that took place in Iran. These are the Iranian people. The Iranian people, look at that. That's to commemorate the Islamic Revolution of 1979. That's the Iranian people. Look at the numbers. Look at the size. Look at the size of this. Can you see how many people there are? Look at that. Not 10, 20 people in here or there. Millions of people. And these are the Iranian, these represent the majority of the Iranian people at the end of the day. But Lindsey Graham will say, help is on the way for the operatives in Iran, for the Mossad agents. Help is on the way. We're going to take down the Ayatollah regime. Good. The millions are the, if you want to help someone really, lift the sanctions of the people. I mean, you're punishing the people of Iran, right? So these people prove those Zionists, so-called opposition, they prove who they work for. Paid. paid to have these, protests and what have you. Musa, يا أخي, who thinks the war will start? 10 is least, 100 is for sure. I think that it's 50-50 at the moment, but the likelihood eventually will be more, because from an American perspective, there is no way that they would deploy so many forces in the region without intending to do something. On the other hand, the United States knows that it's something very costly. So it's not like they can do a very easy operation and get away with it. But they want Iran to have concessions. And they want to try this bully approach as much as possible with a lot of show of force and intimidation. And there are also split intentions inside the United States of America, because the majority of the people don't want war. It's the powerful elite that wants this war. And they'll justify it by their Zionist mouthpieces. Under any pretext, by the way. And every single pretext that they bang on about has been debunked decades ago. And it always gets debunked every single day. I mean, the people in Iran, they were burning the Baal effigies in Iran. You have Epstein and Epstein's network. You have a sitting president of the United States who, according to the reports that and the information that came up from the Epstein files, abused and raped girls, so he's a pedophile. And one of them had her head blown off. Who's your enemy? Trump and the people who do these things to innocent girls, either Americans who were kidnapped and manipulated, trafficked, groomed, coming from very tough backgrounds, or kidnapped from all across the world with their pedophile, cannibalistic network. Who's the enemy of the American people? Iran? The supreme leader is not in the files. The Iranian president isn't in the Epstein files. Dio, I'm an Iranian nationalist and I love Palestine. And the Palestinians love Iran and the Iranian people who share the same views, of course. And that represents really the majority of the Iranian people. It's just that the Zionists, again, always attempt to, of course, have this division. But they're doing it so brazenly lately that it's starting to become counterproductive. It is so obvious. They had this little rat of theirs, Stephen Yaxley Lennon / Tommy Robinson / Tel Aviv Robinson, with the Israeli flags. And under, defend Britain. What does Israel have to do with defend Britain and nationalism? And burning Palestinian flags. Right? So they're making it too obvious. It's too obvious lately how much they're, trying really hard to manipulate people. Yusuf, they may try during our month of Ramadan. That is possible. That possibility is actually there. And Israel did this before. As a matter of fact, Israel likes doing that. Israel likes starting wars in either the Eid period or the Ramadan period. I wouldn't be surprised if the United States goes down the same line. It wouldn't be surprising. What's for sure is Netanyahu is really keen on having this war. Netanyahu is very keen, and Netanyahu needs an exit and needs something. He needs something that will save him in the next elections. And he needs it badly, by the way. So there would be a very big likelihood that something like that would happen. And again, it could be before, it could be after. And John, thank you again. I'll absolutely have a look. Thank you so much for that. Gulliberg, Putin stopped allowing Americans adopting children from Russia many years ago. Well, if America can't protect its own children, then Putin knew what he was doing. If America actively did that to American children and children from all across the world, then you can see where he's coming from, right? Where Putin's coming from. FP stopped. The Iranian foreign minister is a smart, charismatic man. And he is also very calm. He's very calm, and he's doing a lot of work lately. Firstly, really, as in the Arab states next to Iran, they actually don't want the United States to attack, and they are actually trying to stop it, as in very much. Because they know that will embolden the Zionists even further, and the United States will also be in a different position with Israel. Against them, against their oil, against everything. And they understand very well that Israel can occupy or think of occupying them. So they've been doing a lot of communication with him lately. Multiple Arab leaders spoke with him, officials, to try and de-escalate as much as possible. The question is, however, how fruitful will these discussions be? Are they going to really be able to solve it? Or is it going to be a case of Netanyahu having the upper hand? Even if not by the United States attacking first, he will attack first and then drag them again. And we'll wrap it up here, guys. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to another live stream. I'll hopefully be with you tomorrow with more either videos or a live stream or a mix. Thank you very much for everyone who sent supers. John, thank you so much. Brian, Joseph Massey, Gabrielle, Lori, and Golden Sun, and everyone, of course, who participated in the chat. I hope I covered all of your questions, and apologies if I missed some of your questions as well. In the meantime, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day, night, or morning, depending on where you are. Stay blessed. Take care. Make sure you subscribe to NewsV Pro. And make sure you check out our store as well and support us. All of the links in the description box. In the meantime, everyone, stay blessed, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.